Good evening, this is Pine Leaf Needles, and welcome to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO, and here at LOTRO Players. And tonight we have with us Draculetta.
Hey now, everybody.
Ethelros.
Hey.
Raxwolf.
Hello, LOTRO.
Andang.
Hey, everybody.
And Citrus.
Hello.
And today our top story is that Community Manager Rick Heaton, also known as Sapiens, has decided to leave LOTRO and will be taking a position as the Community Manager for... Make sure I get the right one. Extra Life. Yes, Extra Life. I just want to make sure I didn't say Child's Play instead of Extra Life, since
Children's Miracle Network.
Yes. Very well. And Braxwolf, what do you think about this?
Well, what do I think? I think that this is a good move for Rick. I think this is something he's passionate about, as evidenced by the amount of money and the amount of time he's spent of his own. Time is of his own. Obviously, the money he's raised is from others, but towards this charity, he obviously something he obviously feels very strong about. And I think he's chasing something that's going to make him happy, you know. Not that LOTRO didn't. It sounds like it was a fairly tough decision for him if you kind of read some of the forum posts. Obviously, he still loves the game as well. But I think it's going to be a good move for him personally. It's probably good to kind of rotate CMs in and out of your game somewhat frequently as well, just to keep that position fresh and to keep some new ideas coming in. So I think it's probably a decent thing, and I wish him well.
Yes, we all wish you well. And taking over in that position is Freelorn, who was the community manager for Asherton's Call, another game by Turbine, which has recently gone into maintenance mode. So I presume they need him in a more active spot now, so they're moving him over to LOTRO. Does anyone here have any experience with Freelorn?
Nope.
I know he used to work on LOTRO as, I think, as some sort of forum moderator of some kind, but that's all I got.
Back in the CD Brookwood free-to-play days.
And he also worked on the community management team for Arkham Asylum, I believe, as well.
And he did some stuff for Infinite Crisis as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he's been all around the area for Turbine, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I would like to just real quick say thanks so much to Sapiens for being the community manager for LOTRO. Regardless what you thought about him personally, he definitely improved towards the end and, continued to make LOTRO a better place and really opened communication at Turbine quite a lot. And especially near the end, he was definitely moving more towards, Extra Life and that sort of thing. And you could definitely tell that that's his passion, and so I couldn't be happier for him that he gets to be doing what he wants every single day. And whether that's LOTRO or Extra Life, he's able to now switch and see both sides. I mean, how many people get to be able to take a position in two companies that they like a lot in their lifetime? So definitely awesome for Rick, and we're all happy for him.
All right, and speaking of Rick, he was also nominated for a Dragon Slayer Award. And Anding, what do you have to say about that?
Well, Pineleaf, he was nominated, and I think everybody should go vote. It's that simple. Just go and vote for Sapiens. This is his last, I don't want to say last chance, because, who knows, maybe someday he might come back to Turbine, you never know. But this is probably the last chance that he does have for this type of award, and I think he definitely deserves it. I think it's a perfect time for him to get this award. It's his final time, and I think that he should stand out and get this award. So go and vote for him, and go and vote for Turbine as well on there. I think they both definitely deserve the award.
Are there any other?
LOTRO is also up for a bid for most passionate fan base, so also vote for that.
Yes, which we also won before, so try and keep that going, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, very well. Thank you. And as they said, go out and vote, and we would then go to our next thing, and LOTRO makes Games Radar Top 10. And this is top 10 of what?
Basically, the editors of Games Radar picked the top 25 best MMOs that are worthy of your time to play. And, of course, the usual suspects are on the list, but Turbine actually made it twice on the list. Number 11 was Dungeons & Dragons Online, and LOTRO came in at number 7.
Yay!
And, of course, the big elephant in the room was number 1, which is WoW, of course. But
how could it not be?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm not too sure if it's the best MMORPG, but it's very, very definitely the most popular.
Mm-hmm.
The text they put for LOTRO is kind of curious to me because they mention a lot of the usual stuff like crafting and questing, but then they also mention the housing system, which, as we know, is kind of lackluster. They mention PvP, which is also kind of lackluster, although pretty unique, I think, in terms of MMOs, because you tend to be mirrored in terms of the classes, at least. But, yeah.
Yeah,
but
but
they mention
on
things
these...
like the cosmetic or music system, which I think are like two of the big things that LOTRO is well known for. Outside of the story, obviously.
On these type of award things, though, I wonder who writes it. If it's the people who, actually were involved in voting, or if it's just one of their, writers that are freelancing or something like that. Because normally on these type of things, they don't really show necessarily that the person is truly playing the MMO, that whoever wrote it. In my opinion, they definitely try to cover as many bases as they can and give a broad thing. But at the same time, it would be very hard to explain LOTRO in just a paragraph, to be fair. So, I don't know.
All right, very well. Now, on Monday, which is the 28th of July, we will be having some downtime, and this downtime is to apply a patch 14.1. Draculetta, anything interesting in the release notes, since they've already released them? The notes, I mean.
Yeah, I wrote up a little article on this, and I kind of picked out some of the things I found interesting. I think the biggest change that a lot of people are going to be excited about is based on player feedback. The Fangorn dailies are now going to be just a few seconds cooldown instead of the 18 hours that it used to be. And
I question why they did do this for Hypebold.
I kind of wondered that very same thing. Since it's both older content now.
Yeah, and they're pretty much the same system in terms of dailies. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, considering Hypebold is even older.
And then also you can now get the cosmetic pet horn for 375 leaves now. If you don't actually earn one randomly, you can actually barter for them now.
Yay.
And also another big kind of odd thing in it is there's going to be 2 versions of the sturdy steel keys now. One is going to be bound, and the other is not going to be bound.
That's kind of annoying.
You're going to get 2 sturdy steel key drops now.
Yeah, actually,
I have
to
2
note,
sets of keys already.
Yeah, I think they already exist. It's just that it's not obvious which one you have yet. Because, yes, as Ethero said, I have several sturdy steel keys, some that are bound and some that are not bound.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Like the ones you get as special gifts that are bound. For example, when you create a new character from an anniversary box, those will be bound versions because you can't have unbound versions that are transferable to various characters. Because if they were unbound, you could just keep on creating new characters, grabbing the keys, and sending them to your other players.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I thought of doing it.
Yeah, so that's why they exist. It's just that it was never obvious, and so I just see two different sets of yellow keys and say, well, why don't these stack? Because one was bound and one wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go on track.
Skirmishes, they're going to make some changes to the cost of all rewards and skirmish traits. They are going to be lowered between 20% and 50%.
I have a feeling that this is because they forgot to do it in the Helm's Deep update, because it looked like I didn't see a significant drop to them when they did it like they usually do when they do an update. So I think it's to make up for that particular omission.
Well, I'm sure glad I already upgraded my soldier.
Oh yes, actually there is another reason why they'll be doing it, is because they had at Helm's Deep, they removed the bonus you get for using the instance finder. And I think they did drop the cost, but they didn't drop the cost enough to account for that particular item. I think that's the reason why they're doing that now.
They already mentioned there have been complaints on the forums also about some of the legendary item stuff from the skirmish camps being hideously expensive.
Yeah, hideously expensive.
I dare say that would be part of it too.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it also.
And speaking of that, the level 100 blemished symbol of Celebrimbor is now going to require one seal, along with the appropriate marks and medallions, which we don't know how many of those, but it's going to be at least a seal, and that to get your 100 mark to make your second age.
All right, that's a very strange change for a seal being required for a second age. Usually I associate seals with first stagers.
I'm kind of wondering if they're going to give you the option to do, it seems like I think it might have been when Helm's Deep came out maybe, you could barter for the second age symbol and you could use a seal if you had it, or if not, it just cost you more marks and medallions. So I'm wondering if this is going to be the same thing. You can spend a seal and spend less marks, or you can spend more. You know what I mean?
Well, the wording implied that the opposite. They're removing any option to do it without a seal.
Well, yeah, I guess how it's worded. Yeah, you're right, Pine Leaf. So yeah, I'm not sure. That was kind of an odd thing.
Bear in mind that you do get one of those symbols, as usual, because they tend to do that. They give you one for completing the epic. The new epic book, I should say. So at least you'll have one to make your primary weapon from.
All right.
And then champions, guardians, minstrels, and wardens are getting a few changes. You can read about those in the patch notes. There is a ton of PBMP changes coming.
Meaning creeps are being nerfed.
Is that, yeah, I don't know anything about it, so I was going to ask you if you could expound on it, what you thought from reading the patch notes, because I have no clue.
Yeah, it's pretty much just mainly creep nerfs. Defiler healing has reportedly been overtuned from being completely useless to way overpowerful. So they nerfed
even Defilers were saying that it was overpowerful.
Oh, yeah. That is bad if Defilers were saying it.
Yeah. War Leader is also the War Leader res, which is an AoE res, and can be done in combat. It had its cooldown increase too to help with that stuff. That's pretty much it.
So do we know what the soon thing is?
I was just about going to bring that up.
I doubt it's anything.
Yeah, I have a feeling that was a joke, because Sapiens was always noted for his use of the word soon. And in fact, he has a full post about it saying what the various definitions of the various variations of soon are.
Well, I mean, if anything, it would make more sense soon is leaving. Just saying.
And if you haven't read the patch notes, basically there's a little line in the patch notes that just says, soon has arrived.
Unless they mean they've started adding stuff for the Bjorning.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of. Is that
meaning
being in
the Bjorning isn't here yet, but the stuff for it is, meaning it's coming soon.
All right. Now, there is another thing that I noticed is not here, which I hope was just omission in the patch notes, and that is fixing the ability for you to retreat at a skirmish camp. Retreat your skirmish soldier.
I'm not sure if because I think I was doing that earlier, like a couple of days ago, and it seemed to work fine for me.
You could train your soldier as much as you want. The problem is you can't swap them around at a captain.
Right. The problem is the
thought I had
skirmish
done
is not
that.
working.
Actually, I'm not sure. If I don't remember exactly, but I think I might have done that.
Yeah, I tested that out, and in fact, one of my recent videos on the Runekeeper demonstrates the issue because I was trying to see if I could really see the issue, and yeah, I saw it all right. And I also went to a housing area's skirmish bar to see if there was a problem there too, and it was.
Did you try resetting your class traits just to see if it's the same core error as the tutorial issue?
Well, I did not do that because I was not going to spend the money to do that. But based on everything I've heard, that's the solution to the issue. But I was not going to spend the money to test that out.
Yeah, that is the solution to the issue, but it's kind of ridiculous that you have to do that every time.
Yeah. Right. Especially if all you wanted to do was add an extra trait that, in addition to the ones you already have, because you unlocked another trait slot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, Dracula, you might as well continue on. What are store sales this week?
Store sales. Yeah, it's legendary items. Free sample of the week, July 25th through the 31st, a relic removal scroll ×1. Get one of those per account. Coupon code this week is REREL, REREL. Once again, you get one of those per account, so choose wisely. 30% off legendary level cap increase, legendary item stat upgrade, relics, and relic packs. Also in the store for a limited time through July 31st, the Numinous cosmetic sets are back in the LOTRO store.
Actually, something I would want to mention from the patch notes too is the Hobnobbigan's changes. With the chickens, the pets you could barter for don't cost that one specific token that you had to grind also from basic ones. So basically you can just get those straight up with a huge amount of barter tokens, the normal ones. I'm still not going to do it. I'm still not going to do it, but it's there.
It's a little bit less worse.
Less worse.
Less worse. Oh.
It's still pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Anyway, you carry on.
Anything else, Drac?
That's it for the store sales.
That's it. All right. Very well. We'll now start on with LOTRO Players News for our site news, and we will begin with the Summer Festival Guide, put out, of course, by CSTM. Every single time there's a festival, they put out a guide, and they always give you the information that you need for the festival. And Drac, what's the information for the Summer Festival?
Go to the guide, and you can read all about it and find out exactly what you need to do and get the ugly, worst horse they've ever had.
It's the worst. And it's a table. It's not even like, bad colors. It's bad colors. It's what, the sixth or something tablecloth horse we've gotten in a row now, paired with the super ugly robe again still.
Somebody on my Twitter feed said, and I apologize because I can't remember who said it reminds them of the 1970s couch their grandma used to have.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's just,
It's bad. I mean...
I don't even.
You know... I hate to say this, but they're really phoning it in on their horses lately. They're just throwing a tablecloth on and calling it good.
Mhm. That's basically every single festival horse for the past over a year now has been a tablecloth with random design thrown on. and then a matching robe with said random design thrown on. It's like, back during that one dev chat, the art director said that, like, oh, well, we're trying to be gender neutral, but not by not doing tunics and dresses, so instead we're just being gender neutral with this robe. What it is they're not putting the resources into festivals and these kind of cosmetics, and so it's just, yeah.
My personal opinion is that I guess we need Citra's opinion on this also, is, to me, a tunic does look gender neutral.
But that's what I think as well, but apparently the art director thinks the tunic pants combo is for men. Whatever.
Oh, well.
But Golden Star did an excellent job, as she always does, on her guides.
Oh, yeah.
So
definitely.
Find out exactly what you need to do, where you need to go, how you need to do it to get the tokens.
If you are one of the people who does like this horse, whoever you are,
there might be someone.
There might be someone, or maybe they're trying to get the unfashionable title. Maybe.
Well, that'll do it. That's for sure. Now we spoke last time of the producer's letter from July 14th, and this week's poll was, what do you like most from the July 14th producer's letter? And Andang, what are the results of the poll?
Well, Andang. Wait, what? Who said that? That makes no sense at all. Pineleaf did a great segue, and Andang just messed that up. Now he's speaking in third person. What's going on? So the poll was, as Pineleaf said, because probably everyone forgot after whatever the heck that was, that the July 14th producer's letter came out last week, and we asked what your reactions were. Starting off, legendary items were the top answer with 42%, 80 votes, followed kind of closely, about half, by the Beorning starting at level 1. And then very close after that was no second level cap increase this year. Surprised that one's so high, I gotta admit. Through part of the week, it was actually the second answer there. And people definitely seem to like the fact that there is no second level cap increase this year. So that's good to know. At least our audience, a large portion of them seem not to want the level cap increase. And then further down in the results, Central Gondor Tidbits with 12%. The Beorning starting experience, I'm surprised, only at 7%. And then I do not like anything from the letter, just barely behind the Beorning starter experience at 6%. So some interesting results here. Obviously, allies were going to be at the top, because that definitely seems to be the number one requested thing. But some of the other stuff is pretty surprising.
Yeah. Well, I must say that the Beorning starting experience, seeing how that most of the people that would care about the starting experience are probably the same ones who would be even more passionately wanting them to start at level 1.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It goes hand in hand, and so that's part of it. Yep. But still, kind of surprising.
All right. Anyone else have any comments about the poll results? Very well, then we will start to explore some reputation in Gondor. Etheros, could you talk about this?
I could, but I wouldn't necessarily know what I was talking about.
I'll take it, Pineleaf. Zinger.
Right.
He did an awesome reputation article with Gondor factions, and you should all check it out. There's awesome images, all sorts of information, and if you need rep in Western Gondor, this is a great article, and it has a lot of opinions and things like that as well. So I recommend everybody checks it out. He did a great job.
All right, very well. And next we have LOTRO Video Highlights. Free Middle-earth. I presume that this is the free-to-play launch?
Yeah, this was at least around the time of the announcement in September. I think it did come out on the day it happened, actually. And basically, it's the good live-action trailer. That's what you should remember this by. It is the good one. It has thousands of people protesting at the Turbine offices, which are apparently a very large office tower somewhere in a downtown city. And apparently Gandalf is the head of Turbine, and there's no Warner Brothers involved, or very little Warner Brothers influence. It's definitely a dreamlike state, I think, that a lot of players wish was the case, where Gandalf was the head of Turbine. I really enjoyed this trailer. They did a fantastic job with it, and I think it was really popular at the time. And if you have not seen it yet, I recommend checking it out. It'll give you a smile on your face.
Yeah, one of the signs looks like it's in Korean.
yeah. I don't think LOTRO's available there, but
that's the surprise on the matter. All right, and we had episode 16 of Small LOTRO Adventures, Nasty Baddies. Unfortunately, Lily Kate is not here today. So anyone here wish to talk about it?
I haven't watched it yet, sadly. There's been so many articles coming out.
I know, so many articles and so many things trying to catch up on YouTube this week.
For those of you that don't know what Small LOTRO Adventures are, this is the thing that Lily Kate does with her daughter Lizzie. And they always have a lot of fun going through different places in LOTRO, doing quests. And it'll definitely make you smile, because Lizzie's hilarious, and definitely the dynamic between the two is hilarious as well. So I recommend everybody checks it out, even though I haven't watched it.
Right. Sithris, what's this week's outfit?
This week's outfit is called Swan Knight in Training. Basically, I wanted to keep going with the Gondor theme, and I wanted to do a Swan Knight outfit, but I'm not high enough yet to get the heavy armor that's available in Dalamroth. It looks exactly like the Swan Knight armor. So I decided to instead go with a kind of Swan Knight in Training, who obviously would not have the Swan Knight uniform, but it's still very Gondor inspired. It's got lots of steel blue, of course. It's heavy armor, and so it just kind of shows shots of a Swan Knight in Training going around Dalamroth, sitting next to various NPCs that look slightly similar, to get the idea that it's someone trying to become a Swan Knight, because they're cool.
Very well. And we have another edition of LOTRO Poems. And this is another poem, and this one is called Estelali.
Go ahead, Pineleaf.
All right. The world was younger. You interrupted me.
Wow. Sorry.
The world was younger, and days were bright, long ago, long before the flight. From Gondor to Ered Luin I came, not to seek any glory, nor any fame. So many perils I faced, minions of Sauron I chased, met the hobbits, reached the Shire, following no personal gain, no desire. Stayed at Bombadil's house, found Goldberry too, his spouse. Reaching Prancing Pony in Bree, seeing dwarves and hobbits and men free. But I had to move on. I just couldn't dwell, though lone lands and Trollshalls and to Rivendell. Met King Elrond and his sons and other elves, his homely house, his library with many shelves. Then far over the misty mountains cold, through Goblin Town, being ever so bold, Moria was my next stop. I dreaded the place, but I couldn't drop. The bridge of Khazad-dûm told a sad story. Gandalf fought the fight and fell with glory. I came out of Lorien. My heart was lifted. Negative thoughts went away. My thoughts were shifted. Lady Galadriel sent me away with many gifts, lembas bread and 2 swords and armor that fits. Went to the great river, tired and worn, found traces of the 9 and a broken horn. I was shaken. The fellowship was broken. The hobbits were taken. Follow the 3 or follow the 2. Thought to myself, what would Gandalf do? Crossed over to Rohan, saw the evil of Saruman, the 2 towers united, jailer of Sauron. Went to Forlal, met Estel Ali family, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. Together we prepare to defend at our keep, where the hammer stroke will fall hardest, at Helm's Deep.
So if that sounded familiar, it's because it's actually been on the podcast twice now already, but it's a beloved poem, and I'm so glad that Estelle Ali once again featured this, because it really is fantastic. And thank you finally for reading it once more.
Well, the nice part about the post is that he actually breaks into some of the verse and explains what he's talking about in the middle of it. So
yeah, that's definitely one of his goals with these articles, is to really break down and explain the various ones that he does. He's not necessarily going to do the others, just because he feels like that kind of puts words in the writers of those poems' mouths, because, the great thing about poems, he pointed out, was that, there's so many interpretations to them, and there's not necessarily just one. And so, yeah, it's definitely a cool thing that he's doing with his poems, and he's still going to give some of his thoughts on other ones as well. Definitely a great job, Estelle Ali, and keep them coming.
Very well. Now, Lily Kate Alls has another post in addition to her little adventure with Lily Kate, and that is another edition of Lily Kate's Creatures, the Domesticated Creatures of Western Gondor. Sithrith, do you have anything to say about this?
I think she does a really good job of covering all the different animals, especially because she covers a lot about the swans in Dol Amroth, and she's got some really cute pictures of her standing in the fountains, like
yes, the one
playing with the swans.
yes, but the swan.
She looks as big as the swan. Like, the swans look huge.
The swan looks bigger, actually.
Yeah,
right.
It's pretty funny. There's some other good, very hobbity shots of her hanging out with some sheep and pigs and goats and rabbits, and it's good. I definitely didn't notice the variety of domesticated animals that were in Gondor until this post. So yeah, good job on her.
Oh, yes. Lily Kate, if we'll find a domesticated animal or any other type of animal she's looking for, anywhere on Middle Earth you take her, even if it's a new zone such as Gondor. And I'm sure that when we hit Central Gondor, we'll see even more.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's at Cap. Or close to it. She was at Cap before the update came out, at least.
We also have, from Tim, The Family Line Part 2, Wisdom of a Child. And that is continuing a story that was started earlier.
Yes, it continues going through Rohan and his roleplay adventure. And once again, like Brax pointed out last week, it's so cool to have a roleplay, something in Rohan. And this story is fantastic. He does a great job, and it's keeping me hanging. I can tell you that much. So I recommend everybody check this out as well. This is one of our newer writers, just like Estelle Ali, and he's doing a fantastic job with his new series.
Very well. And we'll now head into LOTRO Players Adventures, episode 24, A Bad Wheel. Now, why is it called A Bad Wheel?
Don't turn the wheel, Pineleaf. Do not turn the wheel in the wrong order.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, when you're doing the Forgotten Treasury, those wheels, if you turn the wrong one, let's just say hopefully you've got enough morale that you won't die from the experience, yes.
Or a dedicated healer, at least.
Or a dedicated healer, yes, because it really
very
does
dedicated.
Well, and Brax, you have an interesting pick for this week because it more closely follows up with episode 25, which has not yet been posted, and that is you're talking about the Encore drum.
Right, yeah. So I didn't realize this existed really until the tip came out from Tomiorek at tweaklotro.com. But I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that did know that this was available, but maybe wasn't quite sure how to get it. And so the Encore drum looks like an emote, but it's actually a drum that you carry around and play with you. There's a video at the site The post is just called the Encore Drum, and there's a little video of a Hobbit playing it. It looks like an invisible drum to me. Is it invisible, or is it just that I'm not seeing it
Yeah,
right?
it looks invisible.
Okay.
I think there used to be a drum that came out, but it might be bugged, and there isn't now.
Okay. So you're playing an invisible drum. But the guide actually goes through and shows you how to get it in the grand stair. There's a specific way you have to go and then pick up the item, and it actually shows up in your inventory then as a drum instrument that you carry around. It looks like a consumable, but it doesn't get consumed when you use it. You pull it out and then you pound on the air with your hands, and it makes a little drumming sound. So I think I saw this at this was used at Weatherstock somewhat extensively in a synchronized manner, which looks really cool. But if you ever wondered how to get this drum just to pull out at any point, and I don't believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe you have to be a minstrel or know the actual skill to play a drum to be able to play this one.
You can't interact with the drum, though, in the...
He says in the post, you have to be able to play the musical drum first before you can use the Encore drum.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So I was wrong about that.
Because you can't touch the drum, because we were doing that in today's LOTRO Players Adventures, and no one in our group knew how to play the drum, so we couldn't interact with the instrument.
So if you're going to go down there to get it, make sure that somebody who is a minstrel trains you on how to play the drum first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that'll be another tweak, LOTRO. How to be mentored on instruments.
All right. Now for our news beyond the LOTRO. And we'll begin with the first poster for The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies.
Yes, Pineleaf. This is a pretty epic poster. It shows, spoiler alert, Smaug basically laying ravage to Lake Town with a bard with a bow and arrow. Not one of those crazy machine ballistae things, but he's actually using a bow and arrow in the path of Smaug. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the film, if he uses the ballistae or if he uses his bow and arrow. But it does get me excited about the film. I didn't really like the second one at all, but this does get me excited for the third one.
Now, of course, this particular picture is definitely not from, it's from the depiction of the movie. It's not from the actual Battle of the Five Armies, since... well, I'm not going to give any spoilers on that matter, but...
Pineleaf, you don't know that. Peter Jackson could be doing something very different with the Battle of the Five Armies.
The Battle of the Five Armies took place in Lake Town instead of in Dale?
It is possible.
You never know.
Smaug is one of the armies.
There were
yeah.
Well, yeah, he would make an army in himself, that's for sure. But I'm wondering if he was one of the armies, which side would he be fighting on?
I'm on nobody's side because
Treebeards.
nobody's on my side.
Yes, he would.
Team Treebeard. It's on Team Treebeard.
All right. Sithrith, what about the Hobbit Fan Fellowship Contest?
Well, if you want to see this next Hobbit film, and you just happen to want to see it with Peter Jackson, you can maybe do that. Today he announced on his Facebook page that there's going to be a contest. There's not a whole lot of details. It's just kind of an announcement that there is going to be a contest, not any of the details about it. But apparently there's going to be some kind of challenge or quiz or something to determine the ultimate fans, and people who pass this test or challenge or whatever will be in a drawing to become a fellowship of ultimate fans who get flown to New Zealand, and then they will get a tour around New Zealand to see the various film sites, and the culmination of the tour will be a trip to Wellington and watching the first official screening of Hobbit Battle of Five Armies with Peter Jackson himself.
Of course,
so that's
if you win it, they'll save a lot of money on you, since they only have to get you.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, hey, you should just let me, because you don't have to spend quite as much money. Just, get me wherever the tour starts. Can't be that much money.
And they gave away 3 of these already today, as we record this, at San Diego Comic-Con. During the Hobbit panel, he just gave 3 people in the audience plane tickets to go to this.
Well, there you go then.
He was
None
like,
of us
you get to go,
got that.
and you get to go, and you get to go, just like randomly, which is kind of cool of him.
Very
Yeah,
well.
that's cool.
And speaking of New Zealand and potentially seeing movie sets, Sith wrote another article concerning the Hobbiton in July 2013.
These articles are just rolling into each other, aren't they? Yeah, so this is my final Hobbiton post. It's not my final real-life LOTRO post, but it is my final post of Hobbiton because this is from last year, and the set was finally finished and all set up fully for tourists. Everything was finished being built, and yeah, so the pictures show all the different Hobbit holes fully finished, and the most impressive thing, I think, actually, besides the details on the buildings, is actually the gardening and the landscaping that they finished off. Because every single Hobbit hole has just this, like, huge smattering of, like, vegetables and herbs and random plants outside their door. And, like, they even had, like, all these explanations for it. Like, yeah, like, Hobbits, you know, they really like gardening, but they're not necessarily super into making sure everything's super organized, but they love gardening, so they're just kind of everywhere. And, like, they have these, like, expert gardeners working at the site to make sure everything grows extra big so that it appears like you are a hobbit, and so, like, everything is kind of scaled correctly or whatever. So, like, they put a lot of care into growing extra big vegetables and extra big plants. So that's pretty cool. And then the newest thing in the pictures that there was pretty much no pictures of in my previous articles was pictures of the Green Dragon Tavern, because they hadn't even finished the bridge the last time I'd gone. And the Green Dragon Tavern is a fully operational kitchen and everything. Like, at the end of the tour, you get a free either beer, hard cider, ginger beer, or hot chocolate or whatever. And it's brewed specifically for this tour company. And they have a menu, and you can eat food. I had the beef nail pie, and it was very delicious. And I love the Green Dragon because it is a Hobbit tavern. Like, you go in there, and you're like, yes, I would like to live here forever, please, and thank you. And there's 2 pictures in the article of, like, little, like, announcements that are pinned up randomly everywhere. Like, they have these really detailed, like, smoke ring contest, fair, and, like, vegetable swap meet thing. Like, it's just so cool. Also, living in the tavern is a cat named Pickles, and she was really cool. She was, like, a cranky kind of cat, because, like, there's this little kid that was trying to, like, pull her tail, and she hissed at him, and I thought that was cool, that she doesn't take nonsense from tourists.
And
So, yeah.
I have to say, this is by far the best one you've done yet. It's amazing, some of the images in here. Seeing the full, complete set, particularly the inside of the Green Dragon. Absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome.
All right, very well. Now, for this next one, we'll need a spoiler alert just in case you were interested in this game, but we are going to have Anding talk a little about something about the Shadow of Mordor.
Yes, Pineleaf.
Well, it was kind of in the title of the article.
Yeah. Let me say this is by far the most popular article we've ever had on LOTRO Players, believe it or not. And it's kind of disappointing that this is the one that was. But Celebrimbor is the Wraith in Shadow of Mordor. It's the one that is tied with Talion. And this trailer kind of walks through kind of the story elements, which I'm thinking that this happens fairly early on in the game. I don't think this is like a final reveal, but I could be wrong. But there's some amazing shots of some of the past that happened between Celebrimbor and Sauron. And not all of it's accurate like it is to the lore, but this game does not even just like the stuff that they're looking at in the past. But this game doesn't claim to be accurate in the lore, and that's pretty obvious at this point with Celebrimbor being the wraith that's tied to a Gondorian that is being used to take over entire orc armies to go and take on Sauron 60 years before the Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Yeah. I do think, though, that at first glance, there could be a whole lot more wrong with this game. But at first glance, this is more lore appropriate than the Hobbit film, the second Hobbit film. Just because the second
hold on,
film,
let's not get carried away.
Just because the second Hobbit film claimed to be lore appropriate and wasn't. Just saying. I took so much issue with that film.
I don't remember it claiming
I don't know if it did. Yeah. It's not like,
I think that a lot of the actors claimed at the very least. Maybe not the writer and Peter Jackson, but a lot of the actors definitely seemed to think that it was closer to a lore appropriate version than it was.
I suppose it depends whether you consider it worse to try and be accurate and fail, or not try in the first place.
And just be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I do actually like about this, because I've turned off my lore part of the brain, which I didn't know I could do until this game came along, but I somehow was able to do that with this game. I'm actually excited just to see the dynamic between Celebrimbor and basically every other person that he interacts with, because he basically, not on purpose by any means, but in a roundabout way, he kind of screwed everyone over in the Third Age. And it'll be interesting to see how he responds to people, particularly the cinematic shows a scene between him and Gollum. And it'll be really interesting to see how they interact, because in a weird roundabout way, he kind of caused Gollum because of how he worked with Sauron, even though he didn't realize it was Sauron at the time. I think that it presents interesting moments if you get rid of the fact that it's even remotely close to the lore. And, it obviously is not anything near the lore. But I'm excited about this game, if for no other reason than the fact that apparently the gameplay itself is actually obnoxiously good. A lot of people have said that this is going to be the game of the year. They might be hiding the bugs and things like that, but assuming they're not, it could be really good. Especially considering the fact that Warner Brothers actually moved up the release date to September 30th. That's probably a confidence move. So it's interesting. It's interesting.
I don't have a switch I can flip in my brain. It's kind of like a slider, but it doesn't go all the way down.
I can't for the Hobbit films. I absolutely can't for the Hobbit films. But for whatever reason, because I guess that this isn't really, because it takes place in Mordor and because it's like not an established story or anything like that, I think it's a little bit easier for me to just turn that off, just because there's nothing
I
that
think
it's
you just want the
like
gameplay so much that you're willing to...
Maybe. That could be it as well.
I will give the game credit that whatever kind of messed up story they're going for is at least different from pretty much any other Lord of the Rings game I can think of.
Yeah, I'll give it that. And, I do think that examining how, Celebrimbor interacts with people he's unintentionally kind of screwed over is definitely an interesting thing. I don't think it would fit with the game, and I don't even know what to think about it being in this game. I've just stopped trying to think about this game generally. So, yeah. Celebrimbor is definitely an interesting character that deserves to get some more looking at.
Another thing that does give me hope for this game is that it actually has a really good set of writers. There's a lot of veteran writers from things like the Batman games to there's actually got the writer for Red Dead Redemption. They actually got him as the head writer, and I don't know if you guys have played that game, but there's some really, really good story elements in there. And they definitely, at the very least, have hired quite a few people that know how to tell stories. While it's not at all Middle Earth. It's way, way, way outside LOTRO. It does seem to at least have the potential to have a good story and good gameplay if you ignore the lore.
Ignore a little minor detail of that.
Yeah, and if this happened in LOTRO, I would be totally opposed to this 100% because LOTRO's tried to be lore appropriate for so long, to some extent, that if they tried to do something like this, I would just stop playing LOTRO probably. But since it's in another game that is clearly not trying for whatever reason, I'm just okay with that, I guess.
Well, we should have a category specifically for Shadow of Mordor that's just on a different planet from LOTRO.
All right. Now, of course, the Shadow of Mordor being tied in with Mordor, that leads us into a Necromancer Above All Part 2.
That was a segue. Good job, Hyman.
And anyone have anything to say about this little article?
Once again, fantastic screenshots. Goes through the lore really well, explains it in a pretty simple way, and it's just really interesting. He does a great job each and every week, and I can't wait to see the next installment of this. He does such a great job. So thanks, Agro.
And thank you. That's our news beyond LOTRO. So we'll now go into the question of the week. And Etheros.
Are we doing this?
Yes, and I guess that since you brought that up, it's a good point to mention a little bit of a change that we're making, where basically we decided if the show goes longer than an hour by the time we get to the question of the week, we're just going to drop the question of the week each week, just to keep the show flowing well. And also, we decided that the starter zone doesn't exactly fit the audience for LOTRO Players News, especially that far into the show. Since we're mostly talking about stuff that's coming to LOTRO, and so we decided to drop that for now. Obviously, all these changes could be undone someday, but for now, that's where we're going. So send us feedback and let us know what you think of these changes.
All right, very well. Etheros?
Okay, so the question I chose this week is kind of related to a couple of discussions I saw on the forums, and it's a very old one, actually, is how should you be able to get the best gear, generally? How you tend to see it in most MMOs is the harder the content, the better the gear you get. Which means that the big endgame raids, which is usually the hardest content to do, are almost solely where you get the big gear from. But how things have tended to change recently, at least in LOTRO, where they've kind of opened an avenue for solo players or solo duo players to sort of work their way towards them. It usually takes a lot longer than raids, but they've usually been able to get them through a lot of effort. And not everyone agrees with that method. Some think that it should be only the hardest content that lets you be able to get that stuff. So the first question I come up with is, how do you think the way of getting the gear should relate to the quality of the item you get? So, Anno.
Well, I think that you said it. I think that it really does need to be the harder the content is, the harder, or the better quality the gear you should get. I think that was one of the biggest objections to Epic Battles, was just that there wasn't any great content, and you had all this work ahead of you where you were going to be grinding to get further and further in the tier and stuff like that, but there just wasn't the reward to the player to make it worthwhile. I personally don't really care for gear, but I think that it is something that's definitely necessary for a game to do well, at least an MMO, where, getting new items and things like that should be exciting. And if you work really, really hard at something, you should get an awesome piece of gear or an awesome sword or, something like that is just makes it all worthwhile and, beyond the fact of just completing it. So yeah, I think that, the harder something is, the better the gear should be to an extent. Obviously, you don't want a huge dichotomy where, the players who did the raiding are, like, say, 3 times more powerful than players that didn't do raiding or something like that. Or if you raided for 150 50 hours and someone else just raided for 100 hours, while the person that did 150 hours is like 3 times more powerful. That definitely shouldn't happen. I think that there needs to be a bit of a balance, but I think that people who spend enough time to really work for some of the harder things in LOTRO should get a little bit more credit in return.
Mm-hmm. Rex?
For the most part, I agree with what Andang said, but I would also like to see some more exciting and rare random drops on landscape to make that a little bit more exciting, because how often do you really get something in your pending loot bag that you go, oh, look at what I just got in a random drop? Most of the time you don't even pay attention to that bag until you get back to a vendor and you want to make some silver, you're turning in some tasks, because there's really nothing worthwhile that comes off of landscape drops. But otherwise, I would agree with most of everything else that Andang said.
Mm-hmm. Sister, do you have anything different to add?
Not really. I used to be really big into gear chasing, but I feel like at this point, you can get away with just quest reward gear most of the time anyway. And so, I don't know. I don't really think about gear too much.
Yeah, especially in LOTRO, I don't really care about gear. Just because it's... Yeah. When I come to the LOTRO, I just want to do the story at this point. They've gotten so much better at just telling side quest stories and things like that I don't need to grind for gear. Whereas before, like with I think Isengard was really the last time where I can't even think. Dunland had a pretty good side quest story, but then the other 2 areas were kind of just like filler quests, and so I still felt a need to get like better gear or something like that because there just wasn't something else that I was more focused on. And so raiding was fun for me because there wasn't that side quest to fill up that time that I spent for LOTRO. Whereas now, with the amount of story and things like that, I just don't need to raid personally just because of how that's working. And because the gear's been good enough, I haven't really had to try for any new type of gear in order to get through like just the solo content.
Mm-hmm.
And unless anyone has anything else to add, we'll move to the next question.
I'll just say that usually the best gear's main purpose is to get through the strongest content. Very often in the past, when you were able to have instance clusters, the first parts of the cluster will give you the gear you needed in order to survive the next stage of the instance cluster. And if you're not doing these raids, then what do you need it for?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Well, some people generally just want good gear for the sake of having good gear, to have progression, to show that they've actually made progress in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why
they need to use it. They just want to have that progress there.
And that's why I think that good gear still needs to be attainable, even if LOTRO drops raids, which I hope they don't completely. But if they do, then I think that they still need to have some type of gear progression or something you need to work for, just to give that part of the player base something to look forward to. Because LOTRO is an ecosystem, as we've said several times on the show, and some people really just like to play LOTRO for gear, or maybe they play it for another reason, but gear is pretty high on the list. So I think gear is pretty important, and making it challenging to get it is also just as important, probably.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the next question then. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, raid content is generally where you get the best gear from, raiding and the group stuff in general. So, I think it tends to be agreed that that content is the hardest in the game, although some may argue that jumping puzzles are worse. I don't know, I didn't have problems with the Beacon of Aerworth, but other people did. I don't know. So the question here is, do you think it's fair that group content specifically is pretty much always where you get the best gear and items from? Considering that if we're going to argue that the more difficult the content, the better gear you should get, that maybe instead they should move to having solo duo content that is arguably as difficult as raid content minus the coordination issue.
Yeah.
I think...
Well,
Go ahead, Pineleaf.
Yeah, my opinion is that whenever you attempt to do solo content that's difficult. The problem is getting it balanced between the various classes, is because solo content usually has the trouble that if you're a squishy class, you're going to have a harder time surviving it, and therefore it's a greater challenge for them. So if you racked it up so you could challenge a warden or a captain, then it's probably going to be too difficult for someone who's a squishy class. It's very difficult to balance that.
That is a good point. And that seems to be is most likely why instead of having that sort of system of things being more challenging, they instead open the avenue of just making it take longer to get. Like Hypeball, I think, had certain items you could get, though. The equivalent of raid gear, it just took a long time to get it.
Well, and I think that's the other side of it, is that if you're going to make solo or duo content, then a time element comes in, because the raiders, to get the best raiding gear, they have to spend a lot of time, because they have to master the earlier instances that are smaller, and then they have to be able to master the raid enough to get the gear, and then they have to run the raid enough to where they and all their kin can get the best gear from that raid. And so it takes a really, really long time. I think that's why it's so important to have something like Hypebolt, because it takes the same amount of time as raiding, or maybe a little bit longer because it's not as challenging of content. But if you're going to spend that much time in the game doing some type of repeatable or something like that over and over again, you're kind of doing the same thing as raiding, where they do the same thing over and over and over again. And so you deserve that type of gear then as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually thought Hypebolt was brilliant as somebody who does mostly solo, duo, and small fellowship playing through the game. I don't think, somebody can correct me again, I'm guessing. I didn't think that the gear you got at Hypebolt was quite raid level. I thought it was teal, right? So it wasn't like gold level raid gear.
Well, you got to remember is that there were usually different levels of grade gear depending on whether you did the raid at Tier 1 or Tier 2. So it's probably the equivalent of Tier 1 raid.
Okay.
So I believe it was the first time a set of gear with set bonuses and that kind of level of stats was available to soloers without...
Right. But technically speaking, it was not the best gear in the game.
Until the Instance Cluster came out, it was, but yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I think if you do it that way, if you make it not quite the best gear, not quite as up to the raid level gear, but still pretty darn good, I think that's a nice balance to strike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to agree with that.
I think one thing to mention is that while people tend to call it raid gear, it's not necessarily the gear that's just best for raiding. It's the gear that's just the best in general. And you could argue that simply down to that, it kind of reflects badly on soloers who might simply just want to be better in general, and they're kind of shut out from that purely because they play on their own.
It depends on the game and on the instance, because sometimes the raid gear, when you look at the bonuses it gives you, it looks like it was designed to help with the raid more than anything else.
Yeah, like I remember Rift gear had shadow mitigation and stuff, because that was a big problem in the Rift.
Right, because that's what you needed in order to survive those raids. And we're not going, and that's not even going into things like Radiance, which was, of course,
That's the whole different
a whole other thing.
So, Sithwith, what do you think?
I don't really have anything extra to add. Again, like I try to kind of stay out of the who should be able to get the best gear, groups or solo or whatever, because it always ends up being very the people who like to group usually end up saying that people who group should get the best gear, and the people who solo say that people who solo should be able to get just as good a gear. I mean, obviously it's not always true, but that's just how it usually ends up, and I don't actually care about gear anyway, so I just stay out of it.
Right, fair enough. So we talked about gear a lot, actually, armor pieces and all that. But what do you guys think about the first stages? Because that's kind of a little bit of a different situation in which it is objectively the best legendary item that you can get. do you think that it should just be relegated to group content, or there should be an avenue for soloists to buy, aside from buying from people who've done the content, I suppose?
That's a tough one, I guess. The legendary items are, particularly the first stagers, are way more powerful than the second and third agers, obviously. More than what I thought until I got one. I think that they're pretty powerful, and that's a tough one. I think if they had it be like a very, very rare drop in one of the repeatables or something like that, then that might work maybe.
Yeah, I kind of like to see that too. But I feel very much the same about the first age / second age as I do the raid gear / almost raid gear argument. I guess I don't necessarily have to have a first ager to play the game. I'm just as happy for a second ager, but second ager isn't the easiest thing to get it either, unless they give you the symbols at the end of it. But that's another story. But yeah, I to me it's almost the same argument in my mind. But I know there are probably some people that are more interested in getting a better weapon than better gear.
Right. Do we have anything else to add then? Okay then, I guess Piney, if it's back to you.
Very well, thank you, Ethros. And we did not receive any donations this week, but if you would like to help, you could simply go to the donations page at LOTRO Players, where you can help support the podcast on LOTRO Players and also help support the site. We have $5 and $10 mentions where you can donate and get a mention on one or all of our active podcasts for an episode depending on the amount. For $5, you get a mention on the podcast of your choice, while for $10 or more, you get a mention on all of our active podcasts. And now we have no feedback on reviews or anything like this, but we do have some featured comments. Singer left a comment on the article on the community manager, Rick Heaton, leaving LOTRO. And Ethros, could you please read that?
It's quite a sizable comment, so this is going to take a while. He says,
I can take the second paragraph.
That'll help. So my first go. I personally have no animosity towards Sapiens. I give him props for having been a player of the game before his time as community manager. I think his idea to implement the Take the Hobbits to Isengard and Shield runs were a fantastic opportunity to bolster his duty to implement the two-way flow of conversation between the player and developer. Still waiting for a commemoration for the Bridge of Occasional Hobbit Doom. I'm guessing that's that bridge that a lot of the people tended to fall off during the runs. I don't remember, but I think that's that. Yeah, because his character was on /follow, that really gave him the chance to focus on reading and replaying the viewer comments, and the times when other staff members could join in really ushered in additional responses and information.
Whether you were fond of him or not, he was there doing his job as community manager. Doesn't seem easy to essentially be the face of a gaming community for its players. I'll admit I mostly just lurk on the boards when I do visit, so I'm kind of out of the loop in terms of any specific controversies. Regardless, I'm very happy to see that Rick will be joining the ranks over at CMN, especially with taking on a community role with Extra Life. It's evident that he has already been very involved with them over the past years, and I'm sure his passion with that group will show in his work. All the best, Rick.
All right, thank you very much. And Zinger also left a comment on the Celebrimbor on the Wraith of Shadow of Mordor, and he says, I feel like we're always symbolizing Celebrimbor.
Well played, Zinger. Well played, sir.
Yeah. Yes. We did not receive any emails this week, but you can contact us by emailing us at lotroplayers.mymiddleearth@gmail.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter, LOTROPlayers @LOTROPlayers, Andang @PVNP_Andang, Braxwolf @Braxwolf, Sitharith @Sitharith, Draculetta @Draculetta_72, Etheros @Etheros, Lilykate @LilyKateBuggins, Mystery @MysteryXOX, and Pineleaf @PineleafNeedles. And you could join us live. LOTRO Players Adventures goes live every Saturday at 5 p.m. server time. But it is most likely that we will not be able to do this show live anymore due to technical difficulties in getting the live stream going through YouTube. But be sure to listen to our podcast when we post it at the site each Monday. And that is all for tonight. And this is Pine Leaf Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.